Ownership and possession is an interesting little topic that, we're going to read about as we move through this course. And I think it's easiest to represent now when organizations are using remote or online storage or cloud storage. Ownership and possession really comes into play. When I store the data on my server within my organization, within my own server, within my own organization, I lose neither ownership nor possession. But when I push that storage to a third party, I may still own it, but I no longer have possession over it. And therefore, the security controls and the risk associated with that activity really changes the security dynamic. We have to take into consideration that we've lost possession over a piece of information or a piece of data that we still own, and that's a big consideration for a lot of organizations. By now, you've probably read about the cornerstones of information security, or the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The cornerstones, the triad of information security, and I just want to make sure that if you haven't seen it, that you had an opportunity to look at it. These are the three things that we really try to make sure that we base our security posture on: maintaining the confidentiality, the integrity, and availability of all of our data. And again, as I mentioned previously, that's going to change over time, but we need to make sure that we always take those things into consideration. I have a quote here. It says, we do what we must and what we can with available resources given the inevitable trade-off. And this is really what information security is all about. We're going to do what we have to do, right? Some things that are compulsory, where regulations tell us that we have to do certain things. We will always do that. We will always try to meet the organization's mission objectives. Those are things that we must do, our mandates. We're going to do what we can, or the preferable actions, where we're going to try to comply with best practices and sound security practices whenever possible. But we also recognize the fact that, there are limits to what we can do, right? Resources are limited. We don't have a blank check to write to purchase all of the things that we'd like to have and put all the programs in place. So we're going to do what we must. We're going to do what we can with the available resources, but we recognize that there's going to be trade-offs. Resources are not unlimited, so therefore we're only going to be able to protect certain things, and then other things are going to be more vulnerable. That is the principle of necessity as it relates to information security. There is no way that we can legitimately ensure or assure an organization that we're going to be able to protect everything that they have at the same level. Some things are going to be sacrificed. Human factors as it relates to information principles, information assurance principles. People create, need, and use information. Create a ton of information every day. People design, build, implement, use, break, fix computer systems and other types of electronic devices every day. That's part of the culture of technology. It's that exploration of the technology that leads to this tremendous technological revolution that we've seen over the past 30 years. But people also make mistakes, and these mistakes are usually honest. But sometimes people also can be malicious not just in their actions, but also in their attitudes. And that's where we have to try to control human behavior. We want to make sure that we can differentiate between an honest mistake and a malicious act, and that we have controls in place for both. Mistakes still cause breaches, and these mistakes need to be corrected. But we need to also recognize the fact that sometimes people, both trusted insiders as well as outsiders, do cause malicious harm, both in the way they use technology and their attitudes towards that technology. So if we look at the principles of distrust as it relates to information assurance, it says, to what extent do we trust people inside and outside the information environment or the organization where we're working? We need to assure versus trusting technology to offset and distrust of people. So, for instance, we rely on and therefore must trust both technology and people. But both technology and people are fallible. Software doesn't always work the way that we want it to work. Machines break. People make mistakes. People are malicious. Therefore, both technology and people must be distrusted to some degree. We never have implicit trust for anything. The job of the information security professional is to try to decide how much trust to give technology versus people in any given situation. Can we rely on individuals in any circumstance to do the right thing? Or should we put in place controls that force individuals to try to make them do the right thing? And then we can look at, some certain attack dimensions, and there's a simple threat analysis matrix where we try to, whenever we do a post-mortem on a particular attack, we really want to try to figure out some things. We want to figure out, what was the target of the attack? Was it a physical asset or was it a cyber asset? Was it the equipment that they were trying to steal, or was it some sort of information on a piece of equipment? And then we want to figure out, well, what combination of the attack was it? Was it a physical attack, or was it a cyber attack? Was it a robbery, or was it a hack? And when we start to do our post-mortem, this is very important because it helps us understand where our controls worked and where they didn't work, and then what kind of follow-up or what kind of remediation do we need to put into place. And then we can complicate it a little bit more by throwing in not only was it a cyber asset or a physical asset, was it a cyber attack or a physical attack, but then was it an insider or an outsider? So we could use a thing like a threat analysis cube, and we really should do this in any post-mortem to try to figure out what was the cause of it or how something occurred, because part of the process of information security is to actually put a control book in place to prevent a similar attack from occurring. So if we look at the roles of computers in computer crime and cyber crime, we can really break it down into 5 different categories. It can be the target of a crime, as like when a devices are cracked or physically stolen. It can be the means of a crime or the tool to commit a crime, hacking. The computer is the tool, right? It's difficult to hack without using some sort of technology. It can also be the source of crime, physical location where crime occurs. Maybe we're talking about some sort of online bullying or a server that's spamming, something like that. It can be the environment, right? When the network provides a cyber environment for the crime to occur, maybe like a botnet might be a good representation of the environment. And then also the symbol of a crime, when the computers or other devices confuse or intimidate victims. In other words, this just might be an incident where the device is not acting the way that we thought it should, and because it's not acting in a way that's appropriate, it causes an individual to make mistakes, to perform errors. So really, when we look at how computers and computer technology can be utilized in criminal activity, I like to break it down into this, and there's probably 100 other ways of doing it, but I really look at, was it the target, the means, the source, the environment, or the symbol of a crime? And then I can begin to understand, the motive and the methodology behind it. So that's pretty much it. I want to thank you for your continued work and your efforts, and we will try to push another one of these out sometime next week.